Something about myself you won't be aware of is that I'm a huge admirer of history, specifically the Viking Age. Fortunately, there have been a platter of live-action shows, movies, and video games that have helped bring this period to life. But when I heard an anime was tossing its axe in the ring, I was skeptical. All the anime I had seen was playing around with fantastical worlds and had the freedom to define characters without the measure of history checking them. However, instead of letting that derail creativity and limit the creators, Vinland Saga uses that history as a backbone to ground the world and its characters, while still managing to weave its own tale. Season 1 achieved something that no other Viking adaptation has done. It left me truly speechless when the finale's credits roll. Studio Wit used every trick they've learned to faithfully adapt Makoto Yukimura's character-driven story. There is a vast amount of personalities, but with that being said, not many come close to Askeladd. That's no slight to the story or its many fantastic characters. Askeladd is just top 3 of all time worthy. His cynical outlook helps make him extremely methodical and cunning. Combine that with a bag full of charisma and strength, and you have a leader that any man would follow. Through this journey, the writers managed to successfully make him a somewhat likable character, at the very least one that has won a great deal of respect. However, episode 14, The Light of Dawn, reminds us of who he is and what he is capable of. Of course, he has committed terrible acts and we've seen them, but the presentation of his brutality in this episode felt harrowingly personal. Seeing his second in command, Bjorn, who we've also begun to warm towards, barge into a family home, beating and threatening them, is disturbing. These are not heroes we are following, but a band of killers surviving. Watching Askeladd and his men herd the bodies together to then slaughter the villagers is shocking. Usually the media would like to cut away, at most only draw attention to the massacre in brief moments. But the creators force our eyes on the tragedy, not glorifying our characters or the violence, reminding us of the world and the people we're following. Regardless, even though this is a part of the story when his luck is seemingly going against him, he still finds a way to come out on top. This all makes it extremely believable why strong men have fallen before him, such as Thors. This battle, by the way, incredible. Askeladd uses his environment, intelligence, and speed to his advantage, while Thors uses his combat ability and strength. It's the age-old battle of strength versus speed. But that choice of fighting style is not just to play off a cool dynamic, since it also derives from Askeladd's approach to everything. He mentally adapts to his environment in any scenario and knows how to make the best out of any situation. More importantly for this story, any person. Thorfinn is the vessel of this, with the Welshman manipulating the boy to his whim. As we know, when Askeladd killed his father, Thorfinn swore revenge against him, to the point a decade passes and he still follows him, biding his time till eventually he will beat him in a duel. However, that felt like it was never going to happen, unless he grew as a character mentally. He feels like a young boy drowning in anger and hate, pursuing a path of revenge that derails him so far away from the ideals his father tried to teach. Yuta Uemura really leans into the idea of Thorfinn being a lost, tortured soul. That blood-curdling scream etches the image of a feral animal who's just lost it. Damn the consequences, only one goal in mind. It's not the first instance too. When Leif tries to save the once happy-go-lucky boy he knew, he just turns and unleashes that same beast, all of his pent-up anger. Although we've seen him angry, we've still seen him swallow his emotions, even though he clearly wants to let it all out. Eventually, it'll become too much to bear and his rage just boils over. This isn't screaming to startle the audience for attention, but to draw your eyes to how deep this well of rage runs and how this pain is tormenting him. how badly he thinks he wants this revenge, to the point he explodes into an animal-like trance. This all believably leads him away from his father's lesson, that no man needs a weapon. Thor resented taking action, frowned upon the glorification of it. Of course, from a modern morality perspective, violence and bloodshed is a terrible thing, but the context of the story renders it a problematic conflict for Thorfinn. In the past, specifically the Viking Age, it was encouraged to be a powerful warrior through achieving greatness on the battlefield. Only then will someone be able to go to Valhalla. The show illustrates this culture through its cinematography, as we see the awe a young Thorfinn has for weapons of death, the shimmer of a blade becoming the light in his curious eyes. However, everything it has taught him is at odds with what his father wishes. And that is just one of the many interesting dynamics that not only speak to the characters, but also wider society at this point in time. Nevertheless, this all combines to make Thorfinn's rage greater as he pursues revenge. But Askeladd is not just a target. He is a far more complex figure to the young boy. This is because he is also a mentor, and in its own twisted way, a father figure. The latter really shows when, with his dying words, he tries to save him from the path he has been pursuing. He urges him to think and move on with his life, to learn from his father's lesson. And to present how catastrophic this big event is, this passing, the animators framed the scene extremely similar to Thor's own death. This brilliant storytelling fleshes these characters out and lays bare all the complexity of their relationships. Speaking of which, Askeladd's interaction with Thors, though brief, was something to admire in this story. With few words but plenty of action, the writer successfully conveyed how overjoyed he was when they met. They also layered this initial interaction. Fantastically, the narrative patiently holds its cards close to its chest, as we later learn that Askeladd wants to find the true king of Avalon. Importantly, we also learn how tired he has become with waiting, and would rather find or even mold that person. Enter Thors, the man who he offered to lead his crew. At first, this offer was clouded with questions, but it's clear now, with the knowledge we learn later about Askeladd's desires, that he was being honest. These nuances learned later provide us, the audience, the details to make such connections. It's a level of respect and confidence in the storytelling that pays off in spades. A side effect as well of not spoon-feeding or rushing to details is believable dialogue interactions, as everything is grounded in a world full of agendas. This actually gives me a great segue to talk about Canute and the political landscape he has to navigate. The execution of his sudden transition from being purposeless with unyielding faith to yearning resentment towards God and a driven state of mind is still as jaw-dropping as the moment it happened. Episode 18, appropriately titled Out of the Cradle, is a moment of enlightenment that allows Canute to experience the reality of the world and what he must do in order to create the paradise he believed the Lord would grant. These story beats are everything Vinland Saga is all about, delving deeper into philosophical questions about society, culture, and religion. Simultaneously, great character moments can happen in the most adrenaline-filled episode, such as this scene between Thorkel and Canute. The entire story up to this point has presented Thorkel as nothing but a force to be reckoned with on the battlefield, but this also shows his experience and that there is far more ticking beneath that huge head of his. You get the feeling that this isn't the first time he has experienced something like this, an excellent example of influence granted by showing, not telling. Ultimately, Vinland Saga is a story brimming with complex themes. The anime makes sure to cloud them with shonen dressing before its plunge into the seinen core of its story. From what manga readers say, the narrative does justice to these ideas by further exploring them patiently. However, with Season 2 soon to release under MAPPA's direction, my concerns of its reception are growing, as the audience may be potentially unaware of the tonal shifts soon to come in this saga. But one thing for certain is that this prologue, Season 1, left me speechless.